I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Yes, I'm a nerd when it comes to this, so that's why I was excited to talk about this.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams.
Welcome to Remote Roundup, where you'll get a curated list of the latest and greatest from the world of remote work and long-term travel, including insanely helpful tools and resources, need-to-know trends, destinations worth spending time in, and plenty of insight into what it really means to live and work around the world. And we do it all with a dose of humor, or at least we try. I'm Janessa, Partnerships Manager for Zero to Travel, a slow traveler working remotely who took an adult gap year 7 years ago and never returned to a conventional life. And fun fact, I've been skydiving 3 times, but I refuse to bungee jump. I would happily jump out of a plane again, but bungee is where I draw the line.
I've never done either, but I definitely feel like I have more of a fear of bungee jumping than skydiving. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one.
So you're going to jump out of a plane?
I'll put it on my bucket list for maybe next year. And I'm Caitlin, associate producer of the Zero to Travel podcast and a digital nomad for the last 1.5 years, who loves to help people do life differently. And fun fact for me is I just got back from 2 weeks in Mexico, traveling for the first time with personal item only, no carry-on, 2 weeks in a backpack, and I would never recommend it. I would never do it ever again. And I was that person. I flew on Spirit, and I was that person who had to layer up all of her clothes in order to get her bag to fit in the little sizer thing. So I didn't have to pay the extra $100. So I don't recommend that.
Oh, no. You were like the Joey from Friends meme where he's wearing all of the clothes.
Oh, God. Yes. Yes. And it looked like I gained like 50 pounds. So that definitely checks out. Anyway, coming your way this month on Remote Roundup, we're going to share what we've been up to these last couple of months. Janessa's going to share some budgeting tips for travel that I know I probably need to listen to really badly. I'm going to share a hot take on the realities of solo travel. And I'm also going to share the one mistake that I keep on repeating during my travels so you don't have to. And by the way, before we dive in, a quick reminder that you can get our free value-packed community-driven newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. All right. So you might have noticed that we have been away for, I think, like 2 months now. You haven't heard an episode of Remote Roundup, but don't worry. We're still here, and we're going to continue to make episodes for everyone here in the community. We were just on a little bit of a holiday break, easing kind of into 2026. We have been working on getting our host collective episodes up and running. If you haven't listened to those yet, make sure you have. We're going to be sharing a few of those every month for you. And then we're going to keep recording these Remote Roundup episodes for you every other month. So you're going to hear from us now in March, and you'll hear from us again in May. And if there's anything that you ever want us to cover on these episodes, if you have any questions about travel, nomad life, remote work life, absolutely anything, you can always email me over at Caitlin@zerototravel.com, or you can shoot us a DM on Instagram at zerototravel. All right. So, like I said, you haven't heard from us in the last couple of months. I know Janessa and I have both been out and about. So, Janessa, I think you might be back at one of your favorite places on earth. Do you want to tell us where that is and what you've been up to?
Yes, I am currently in Cape Town, South Africa, which is one of my favorite cities. And this is my second year coming back for 3 months. It's great to spend the Southern Hemisphere summer here, escape winter. I love being in a European time zone. So if you haven't been to Cape Town before, the peak season to be here is October to March or April-ish for the best summer and weather. But I would say that December, January, and February are the peak months for the nomad community here. It has been a very, very busy social scene. I think most people can stay for about 90 days. That's what it is for Canadians, Americans, Europeans. So that is exactly how long I'm staying this year. And if you haven't been before and you're starting to look at where to stay in Cape Town, you'll probably come across some neighborhoods called Sea Point and Greenpoint. Those are probably the most popular where people want to live. They are the coastal areas on the Atlantic seaboard, but I'm currently in the CBD, city center, a couple other areas that are nice. Area called Gardens that's nearby, and some people are going a little bit further down the coast as well. So lots of great places to stay. Getting around in Cape Town, there are buses. I've never actually taken one. Maybe I should figure it out and try. Everyone uses Ubers here, so they are quite reasonable, about like $3 to $5 to get most places in the city. However, I've noticed that does start to add up. It doesn't seem bad one at a time, but if you're doing it multiple times a day to get to different areas, to go co-work with friends, catch a sunset, go to different events, I've noticed that my transportation costs can be a bit high here, which we're going to talk about budgeting later so we can get into more of that. Now, the number one question I always get when I tell people how much I love Cape Town is it safe? Do you feel safe there? I know that that can be a real concern for people. I don't love this question because I think you should always consider like, who is it safe for? And I think it's important to acknowledge that we all come with, different experience and privilege. But that said, you just have to kind of be aware of your surroundings. I've personally never felt unsafe, but you kind of have to follow certain rules. So certain areas you don't walk alone at night, even if the sun is still up in the city center. If it's after business hours, then I tend to get an Uber instead. When it is $3, you'd kind of just rather be safe. You'd also don't want to hike alone here, but there are so many hiking groups that you can join. And Table Mountain is kind of the famous landmark in the city that you may have seen. And there's so many different ways to hike up it. That's one of my favorite activities here. So you'll never get bored in Cape Town, but I would say overall, I think as long as you are a little bit careful, it's not an unsafe place. And, there's so many places in the world where you need to be a little bit aware. The other concern that people often ask about is load shedding. If you've never heard of that, it's where electricity would turn off for certain areas for a few hours of the day. And it'd be on like a rotating schedule where you'd have certain power outages that are scheduled. So that was a concern a couple of years ago, but since I've been here last year and this year, it hasn't really been a factor. But I would just say if you're booking accommodation, it's always good to consider having a backup Wi-Fi situation just because this system could come back at any time. But if you're looking at travel blogs from a couple of years ago, you'll probably read all of these things about load shedding. But at the moment, we've got great electricity, great Wi-Fi. That said, I'm working from home at the moment, but there's lots of great co-working spaces here and laptop-friendly cafes, and you can connect with lots of other people who are doing the same thing for all of the different special interest groups. Like I said, the hiking, you can go dancing and partying if you want, and lots of networking events, things like that. And accommodation is the other tricky thing here. There are several co-working, co-living spaces. I've heard great things about all of them, but they are fairly expensive and booked up quite a few months in advance. So if you're going to come to Cape Town this season or next season, plan your accommodation as early as you can, because Airbnbs can also be quite expensive. I would say, unfortunately, probably don't come here or plan to come here unless you have a budget at least $1,200 a month booking on Airbnb. And I'm paying a little bit less than that now, but talking to friends, I've seen the majority of people are paying about $1,600 to $3,000 US dollars, which is quite high compared to a lot of destinations, right? Like we typically spend quite a bit less than that in most places we hang out, such as, Mexico, Bulgaria, etc. So I think it's also just important to be mindful, though, that like the locals are also getting priced out of the area. I know this can be a concern in a lot of cities around the world at the moment. So I think it's important to take time to kind of learn about the complex history here in South Africa, notice the inequalities that still exist here and try to get out of the nomad bubble a little bit and talk to locals. But aside from the accommodation costs, otherwise it's relatively reasonable still here. Not overly cheap. I'd say it's less than the US and Canada, maybe more similar to some parts of Europe, like in terms of groceries and eating out and activities. And there are so many amazing side trips you can do from here as well. They're not necessarily cheap either. Flights within the continent of Africa are surprisingly expensive, actually. I'm about to go on a trip, actually. I'll be able to talk about this next time, maybe to Victoria Falls. And I'm going to go to Zambia and Zimbabwe and Botswana and Eswatini. So there's so many cool places to go. You can go safari in Kruger National Park. I'm going to do that as well. So I wish I had even more time to explore South Africa and the surrounding countries, but I will very likely be back because I love it so much here in Cape Town. Sorry, I could go on and on about how much I love this city, but
I know every time I feel like you and I talk, Cape Town always comes up in our conversations somehow. I've heard so many people share how much they love being in Cape Town. And I know you were sharing with me the other day how you've been spending a lot of time at wineries and on yachts. So that sounds like a great time. Put me on the water, take me to a winery. Let's go on a safari.
Yes. It's just the landscapes are beautiful. Yeah, you have the animals, you have the winelands, you've got the coast and the ocean right there, and the mountain, of course. It's one of the most beautiful cities I've ever spent time in. But enough about Cape Town. Tell me where you've been up to. You just got back from Mexico.
I did. So right now I am back home with my family in Virginia, USA. I was just in Mexico for a little bit too. I was on kind of my yearly retreat trip to Mexico. I've been going, this is my third year going down there for that retreat. The last 2 years I've been an attendee. And this third year, I actually kind of got to help out behind the scenes and help kind of keep the event running and kind of assisting during the retreat, which is a really amazing and kind of wholesome experience. And that was in Tepoztlan, Mexico. So I'll talk a little bit about there first. So I was there for about a week. This time, usually I spend some time in Tepoztlan, the actual town, while I'm there. I didn't get to do that too much this year. I went just for the retreat, and then I spent some time in Mexico City. But Tepoztlan is a gorgeous little town about 90 minutes south of Mexico City. It is considered by the government actually a magic town. If you're, familiar with magic towns or like places that are supposed to have these like spiritual vortexes and things like that, it's kind of a very sort of sacred place. It's known as the birthplace of Quetzalcoatl, if I'm saying that right. That is the Aztec feathered serpent god that you might see in a lot of kind of like art and things like that in Mexico. Like I said, it's gorgeous. It is surrounded by these huge mountains that are, believed to be, very spiritual and magical in themselves. There is a huge market on the weekend, which is awesome. It's cheaper than Mexico City. I would say they have a great hike up to the Tepesteco pyramids. It's a bit hard. I thought it was a bit hard. I did it last year. I feel like there's stairs kind of the whole time, but you were going up. Like you were going up the whole entire time. But the view is gorgeous. It's a great hike. One thing that I like about it is you feel a little more local there. So it is a big tourist spot, but it's more of a tourist spot for locals and for people who are kind of from around the area, from South America. So it's not really very much on the radar, for US travelers, other Western travelers, everyone around the world. So you kind of feel a little more like you're getting a little more into the culture there, which I think is awesome. As far as nomading goes, with that being said, Wi-Fi is great, but there's definitely nothing set up for co-working. There's no cafes really set up for, sitting there and working every day. But there are some cafes that you can get some good, hot chocolate and things like that. So I would recommend if, maybe you were taking you were driving from Mexico City to somewhere like Oaxaca. So Pozlan might be a good stop for a day or two, especially on one of the days of the market or one of their larger events. But yeah, I love Tepoztlan. I could talk about my experience there forever. But like I said, this year I did spend some more time in Mexico City afterwards. I spent 4 or 5 days after retreat in Mexico City. And if you haven't been, it is incredible. It's considered a cultural capital of the world. And I do believe, last time I checked, it has the most museums in the entire world, which checks out. Like there are so many, there's huge museums. They have the Anthropology Museum, which is huge. They have the Modern Museum of Art, which has such a variety of collections. Almost went there this time, but it was on a rainy day and everyone had the same idea as me and the line was way too long and I couldn't deal with it. So that's on my list for next year, but tons of museums. The green space there is incredible. I mean, they have Chapultepec Park, which is huge, which is where they have some of the museums and tons of different statues and monuments and things like that. But then just the green space as you're walking around the city, you kind of feel like you're in a little bit of a jungle. There's such a variety of trees and plants while you walk around. It is gorgeous. I always love my experience when I go there. Food, obviously Mexican food is amazing. You have everything. You've, Mexican food and food carts to Michelin star taco joints, and then everything in between, all other types of food there in Mexico City. It really is like a cultural hub, like I said. Shopping, so many markets, so many. There's the popular ones on the weekends and kind of the different, the different sections of the city. But then there's small vintage ones that you might run into. There's a lot of good vintage shopping and bazaars. So, I didn't have enough room in my bag this time to buy too much. So didn't get anything, but yeah, no personal bag when you go to Mexico City for sure. Sunday, their main street on Sunday is shut down. This is a huge street. They shut it down just for people to bike around the city, which I think is awesome. So you have all the families out and about, all the dogs. I've never seen so many dogs in my life in Mexico City. Everyone just walking and that's how they spend their Sundays. And I think that's really, really beautiful. Accommodation, not so cheap, I would say. I spent about $48 per night for 5 nights once taxes were added. But I did book last minute on Airbnb. It kind of also depends what your standards are. You can find things that are a lot cheaper. I didn't look into hostels here. And yeah, if I had booked, farther in advance, there definitely would have been way more options for me to choose from. And then the Nomad scene, didn't dig into that too much here this time. You can stay, I believe, 180 days on a tourist visa, at least for US citizens at this moment. But huge expat community, huge nomad community. You have your Facebook groups and all of that. You have tons of cafes, gorgeous cafes, lots of co-working spots. So, there's a reason that this has become such a really big hub for travelers. And yeah, I can't wait to go back next year.
Amazing. I'll have to add, was it Tepoztlan to my list? I haven't been there. I have been to Mexico City, but quite briefly. I did not go to museums. I just had a brief checking it out for about a week. I've spent more time in Oaxaca, which I love.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
This episode is brought to you by Fandango. People say fans are too distracted these days, but the truth is, when a great movie hits the screen, you show up, you stay glued, invested, part of the story. And without fans like you, there'd be no cinema magic, no shared moments. So head to Fandango.com to get tickets, stream, or rent or buy top movies and series. Fandango loves fans.
Now, back to the show.
Quick tip on the visa, though. Yes, you can get up to 180 days, but it's not guaranteed. So sometimes people get less. So always check, because I've had a few friends run into this where they assumed they got the maximum amount, 180, and they checked their passports and they actually only got 90 or 120, and then they had to pivot their plans. So if you know that you want to stay 6 months, I'd recommend booking a flight 6 months out, just so that you can tell them right up front that that's how long that you want to stay. But just always check and don't assume that that's how long you have, because you don't want to run into issues if for some reason they randomly gave you a different amount.
Good to know, Janessa. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think I've heard that in some other countries too, where it's technically not guaranteed. 9 times out of 10, they give it to you, but you never know. And one PSA on flights really quick. I think in the States, a lot of times we think flights to Mexico are going to be really cheap. They have definitely gone up, at least in my experience this year. They've been a bit more expensive this year, so try to book a little more farther in advance. I took a Spirit and Volaris kind of combination flight, and I did personal item only because it was the cheapest flight that I could find, but it was still more expensive than like the flight that I got last year with a carry-on bag included. And it would have been $250 more for me to have added a carry-on bag, partly because it was 2 flights. So a Spirit flight, then a Volaris flight, and then another Spirit flight, so 4 flights. It was like $60, for each flight added on. So that's why I did my personal item, but it was insane. And then the flight wound up being even more expensive, I think, than if I had just gone with the original more expensive flight, because we all know that these small, carriers like to add everything on, make everything add up for you. But what I didn't realize is when I went to check into my flight, I had to pay an additional $60 each way for like a tourist tax, essentially. I forget the name of the exact kind of tourist tax, but I wound up having to pay $60 to check when I checked in to my flights to get there, and then again when I checked into my flights to leave. And after looking into that, because I said that makes no sense to have to pay a tourist tax to leave, so now I'm paying $120 because of the way that I booked my tickets, which I did it on Kiwi, which is a good travel hack is to look at Kiwi for your flights, because they do some combinations that other websites don't. I found my cheapest flights on Kiwi, but because of the way that it booked on there, I'm guessing separate flights and not kind of together. That second ticket, for whatever reason, it's like it was not connected to the first one. So it appears as if I never paid that original tourist tax. So I had to pay it the second time just to, get on with my flight. So another $120 on top of my tickets. And yeah, so just, I guess, be a little more mindful and do your research on all of the add-ons before you're booking these small flights. And I've never been charged in any other country kind of this tourist tax. I am not sure if usually on other flights, let's say you book Delta somewhere, maybe that tax is already included in the flight, so you don't see it and it's not as visible as the way that I did it on the Spirit. So just double check all of those things, because I finally thought I had booking flights figured out, and it turns out that I don't, and I still have a lot to learn. So that is that.
Oof, yeah. We all get humbled once in a while. Yes, that tourist tax usually is included in the flight cost. So I'm surprised that the way you booked it wasn't when I've flown on like Delta or something. It's been included. I've had to pay it separate when I crossed in the land border, actually, because normally the airlines will build it in. So that was the first time I found out about it, was when I crossed from Guatemala and needed to pay it on arrival because I wasn't flying in.
Yeah, see, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, small airlines, yeah, they like to trick you. I thought I was, saving a bunch of money. Turns out I spent more than I had to. I should have just got the better flight. I should have got the comfortable flight. But, speaking of money, Janessa, I know you have some budgeting tools for travel and life that you want to share with us. So I'm excited to hear about that, because if anyone hasn't picked up on it now, Janessa is very type A and I am very type B. So I need these tips very badly. I'm sure a lot of you listening to the podcast do as well. So Janessa, if you want to share some of those with us.
So there's a few different apps that I know are popular for this. There's one called Travel Spend that I've seen a lot. There's one called Traby Pocket. That's the one that I personally use. And shout out to Zero to Travel guest Jason Robinson for putting me onto that one. I've been using it for over 3 years now, and I've tracked every single thing I've spent, which is wild, but is actually not as difficult as it sounds. And I don't spend that much time on this, even though I do track it manually. So I'll walk through the system that works for me, and then I'll also share some bonus tips if you are self-employed like Caitlin and I and don't have a consistent income. So first, what I look for in a budgeting app, like I said, I use one called Traby. I need custom categories, since the standard ones for people who are budgeting their life living in one place might not have the needs of a travel lifestyle. I look for unlimited currencies that will automatically convert back to one main currency. So I use US dollars, even though I'm Canadian, because I earn in USD, so it's just easier. I look for unlimited quote unquote trips within the app so that I can separate my expenses by country. And I want the ability to export the data from this app into a spreadsheet. So if you can automate expenses based on your credit card statements, great, that's awesome. I like to be able to also track where my cash goes, especially when I'm in really cash heavy countries and I'm spending cash for both restaurants and groceries. So to me, it makes a difference where it goes. And I also spend on multiple cards in different currencies, which makes my finances a little bit confusing, but it makes the manual tracking a little more necessary. So once you've chosen an app, choose what categories are important to you. I have a few different ones that I've tweaked over the years, but the two main ones that I keep a closer eye on, and I kind of set goals annually of what I want to spend in these categories, are accommodation and flights, because as we've already talked about, those are some of the most expensive categories probably that most people spend on. It's also worth noting that I don't quote unquote budget. I just retroactively track. So for example, I don't stop going out to eat once I've hit a certain number for the month. I just want to know where my money goes, and then I can adjust going forward if needed. Maybe you do need to budget a little bit more strictly, but I just want to know, and I like having that data. So I don't worry month to month, because it tends to balance out throughout the year with different destinations having different price ranges. But, for example, if I spent more time in Cape Town and went way over my accommodation budget, then maybe it's time to go back to Bansko for a little while, And so that's kind of how I manage that. And I look at my accommodation costs on an annual basis instead of monthly. So I know it's different for long-term travelers like us versus if you're just going for 1 month of remote work somewhere, or if you're tying it into a holiday. I know that some people prefer to kind of sort their money into buckets ahead of time for different categories if they have a banking app that allows you to move it around and track it like that. I don't, because as I said, my system's a little confusing with the different countries and currencies. So I think based on how I spend, it's fine to not do that. But, as I say, personal finance is personal. So you do you. So after I'm done tracking in the app, then each month I export the data to a spreadsheet where I've got my formulas set up that it auto sorts it and calculates the totals for each of the categories that I've set. Yes, I'm a nerd when it comes to this. So that's why I was excited to talk about this.
Can you, maybe you should start like sharing that spreadsheet and charging like $5 for everyone who uses it.
True. I see so many budgeting templates these days, but I haven't seen any for full-time travel lifestyle. So maybe that's onto something.
Income.
So I've got my formulas set up, and then I copy and paste those totals into my master spreadsheet that's been going for, like I said, 3 years now. And then I also keep track of other things like my income, my taxes, the total across all of my bank accounts. And it has a lot of different tabs, as does my brain. But I like seeing it in different views. It just works for me. It works for my brain. So yeah, that's kind of how I track things on a regular basis. So if I'm in a more cash heavy place, I'll maybe track things daily or as I spend them just so I don't forget. Whereas if I know a lot of it's on credit card at the moment in Cape Town, I'm not spending a lot of cash. I'm mostly tapping my card everywhere. I've gotten a little lazy, and maybe like once every couple of weeks, I'll update everything and put it into my app and then into my spreadsheet. So yeah, that's kind of the way I do this on a monthly basis. And then I'll move into some tips if you're self-employed. So make sure you set aside a percentage of your income for taxes every month.
Ooh, guilty of not doing that.
Right? I hear so many people that get stressed out when tax season comes around. I know that's coming up this year, myself included. In year one, I was not prepared and it felt like a big hit. So now part of this system and process is I choose a percentage that seems to work. I put it into a high yield savings account each month so that it can continue to make money for me until it's time to give it to the government. And I am still currently a tax resident in Canada. But I remember we did talk about options to get out of paying taxes depending on where you're from back in our October remote roundup episode. So if you missed that one, we do talk about some different techniques and strategies for taxes, but I'm currently still paying taxes to my home country. And my second tip is I've also started putting aside my own PTO. So I have a paid time off budget for myself so that it doesn't hurt so much when I do take a vacation, which I said I'm about to go take a big vacation around a few African countries. Because if you travel full time, this lifestyle is not a vacation. And then it can be stressful to actually take time off, right? So you're not only spending more, you're also not earning any money because if you don't have an employer paying you for time off. So this way, I've designated some money during my quote unquote normal weeks or months, and that I can access when I'm not working. And it kind of takes some of the pressure off.
Okay. I have 2 questions for you on that.
Yes.
So do you also then have like a regular savings account as well that you're putting money into?
I probably should have more of my designated savings. I have investments elsewhere. But in terms of like an emergency fund or saving for like a bucket list trip, it's kind of all just in my checking account at the moment. That is one of my goals for this year, to make that a little bit more separate and clear of designating savings for certain things.
Okay, cool. And then how do you decide how much you're putting away for your PTO? Is that like, do you kind of look at what you're making each month and setting aside a certain percentage of that? Or how do you kind of come up with that?
Oh, yeah. Good question. So I kind of decided how much time I take off in a year. Like I said, like this life's not a vacation. So I typically take like a couple times, like a week here and there, some time at Christmas, and then some little long weekends. So I kind of did it on assuming about 4 weeks of vacation, which maybe if people have employers in the US, that seems like a lot. For Europe, that's the bare minimum of vacation time. So that's what I'm starting with. So that would assume that I'm working 48 weeks of the year. And so then I calculated, if I'm not working for 4 of those, how much of every normal week I would be putting aside to cover those 4 weeks that I'm not working.
Okay. I love that you do that. I think that's like I've never heard someone like saying like that they put aside money for their PTO. But that makes sense. That's one thing that I miss about not being employed.
This year.
Yeah. One thing I miss about not being employed is, getting paid to not work. Like, that's nice. I got to clock out when I use the bathroom now, I mean, not necessarily, but depending on how strict you are. But yeah, when you work by yourself, like you're taking a 10-minute break, that's not a clocked in 10-minute break. So that's interesting. And then,
exactly.
Okay. A couple more questions. I know you want to share some real numbers with us real quick. But before we do that, I don't think you touched on this, but what is like the key difference between travel spend and Travi Pocket? Like, how would I decide? You said you use both of them. So it's kind of for totally different things.
I think they're quite similar. Both have free versions. So you can log into them, make an account, check it out and see which features are included in the free version, versus which ones you may need in the paid version. I have tried both as well. And at the time I realized for what I wanted to use it for, I was going to need to pay for one. And back in the day, Travi had a lifetime, like you could just buy the app and you would have the features for lifetime instead of being a recurring subscription. So that was really appealing to me. That has changed since then. I was luckily grandfathered into that pricing model. So take a look at what the current prices are. Like I said, you could try both for free and then see which features you really feel like you're missing. So it might be the custom categories, it might be the currencies, it might be like saving all of your old trips versus having to start again, or to be able to keep all of your old trips and just add new ones, and how it exports and fits into your system. So I'd say try both and see. Yeah, because it's been a couple of years since I've tried travel spend. So I'm not an expert on that one anymore.
Okay, great. That's super helpful. I need to check out that second one for sure, because I need to get better at this, Janessa.
We'll work on it together.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, so let's hear some of those real numbers.
All right. I love when people share what they spend. I'm just so nosy. So I think my algorithm on Instagram knows this, and it's always showing me what people have spent. So let's get real about it. So here's just a really kind of crazy, I can't even believe it. But when I first started tracking would have been over 3 years ago. So from January of 2023 until the following fall of 2024. So that was 20 months, was kind of at the beginning-ish of my full-time travel when I started tracking. I was so on a budget, especially with the accommodation. And I averaged in that 20-month period only $385 per month on accommodation, which I don't even know if that exists anymore. This wasn't even that long ago. I was purposely picking destinations that were less expensive. There were, I think, maybe a couple months that I stayed for free in that. And then at that point, I decided to do a 4-month trip with the former remote year company throughout Africa. And all of that went out the window. And I spent so much money on this 4-month long program. And then when I kind of started traveling independently again, I feel like things got a lot more expensive. But I loved sharing that with people at the time of like, it can be very affordable. I don't know anyone back home that pays only $385 in rent. So the fact that I was able to do that around the world was really cool. These days, I definitely spend a little bit more. I did check to see what I spent last year. So it's a little bit more up-to-date numbers. So for 2025, I spent a total of $6,180 for the entire year on accommodation, which I know some people, that's like 2 or 3 months of their life. So that was, full disclosure, only about 8 months of the year. So for about 4 months, I was able to stay for free and with family. So that averaged out to $515 per month overall for the whole year, if you count those months that were free. So overall, pretty good. So it's balancing when I'm paying for accommodation, when I'm not. And if you only count the months where I paid, it was still $770 for accommodation. So part of the way I'm able to keep that low is by always doing month-long or more stays. I don't hop around a lot. We've talked about this before, about how I'm definitely a slow traveler for 2-3 months at a time. But man, Cape Town is hurting my accommodation budget so far for 2026.
Oh gosh, yeah, I can imagine. I'm not making it to Cape Town for a while with the cost of accommodation there.
Yeah. So the other one that I'd shared at the beginning of like the other category I do track and make sure I know that I'm on top of it is for flights, because that can also add up if you're moving around very quickly. So in 2025, I paid $2,370 on, I think, 7 flights to new countries. I changed countries 7 times last year, and I had 1 flight on points. I'm not there where I'm booking all the flights on points, but I got one of them at least. I got home from Bulgaria, so that was nice. But yeah, so just over $2,300 for the year on flights. And so if you were to kind of, average that out monthly, that's really not too bad. So just a couple of times where like I loved having this information was, do you remember before you went to Bansko for the first time, you texted me and asked, do you know about how much you spent in Bansko?
I did.
And I said, yes, I can tell you exactly per month what it costs to live there. So I love that I can just...
I was so amazed that you had all this information. I was like, oh, wow. Good thing I asked Janessa.
Exactly. So I can help friends out. I can let people know if they're thinking of a destination, if it might fit within their budget or not. And my friends know about me, how much of a nerd I am. And it also is helpful when I return to destinations that I like, because over the past year, I've returned to a lot of places for a second time. And now I kind of know what to expect. Obviously, inflation is real all over the world, but it gives me a good benchmark so that I kind of know how much a destination will cost based on what I did before. And so I hope that some of this was helpful and practical. And if other people are struggling with budgeting their travel, or they have no idea where their money goes, maybe you can try some of these things. It definitely helps for me.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show.
So let's move on. Caitlin, I heard you have some opinions on solo travel, and I would love to hear it.
Ooh, all right. We are just getting right into it, Janessa. All right. Okay. I'm just going to come out and say it. I hate solo travel. I hate it. I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, Janessa. I think maybe we'll see what happens. But feel free to chime in at any point and stop my rambling. But yeah, I
can't wait.
Oh, I just had this, epiphany while I was walking the streets of Mexico City by myself. And that was, man, I really hate solo travel for me personally. I'm not saying that solo travel isn't amazing or that you shouldn't do it, because I think that everyone should. That is something that I feel incredibly strong about, is that everyone should try solo traveling at least once. If you hate it the first time, try it a second time. If you hate it the second time, try it a third time. It really can 100%
be 100% agree with that.
Yes. It really can be like one of the most like transformational experiences. There's so many opportunities for personal growth, for learning, getting outside of your comfort zone, like just like learning new things about yourself, who you are, what you want to do, blah, blah, blah. I can go on and on about the positives of it. Right. But, and some people, like, they just like traveling alone for the sake of traveling alone. Like, they don't have to make any decisions with anyone else. They can do whatever the hell they want. And they just have no problem, with traveling alone. So maybe it's not even a growth or a comfort thing. They like legitimately enjoy it. And that's just the kind of person that they am. So yeah, like I said, I'm a big advocate for it, but sometimes for me, I just feel like it is too much. Sometimes I just don't want to deal with the anxiety and the stress of pushing myself outside of that comfort zone again and again and again. And I just want to be comfortable. I just want to be comfortable. And I think that is okay. I know, a lot of times, the word comfort, being comfortable, does have some like negative connotations because you're not growing and things like that. But I think sometimes it is okay, especially when traveling. I think with solo trips, it's great when you're doing it super intentionally. You are intentionally going on this trip. You're planning to be alone. You're anticipating that you're going to get out of your comfort zone. You're expecting this, right? You're expecting to be uncomfortable. But, as a nomad who is kind of a solo traveler, we can get into that in a little bit. As a nomad and someone who's constantly traveling, like, to be constantly pushing myself, it can really be a lot. And for me, I feel like sometimes it doesn't get easier. It doesn't get easier. The more that you push yourself, maybe it does a little bit, but sometimes, you feel like it at least doesn't get easy enough, quickly enough to like get over it and be like, oh, okay, now I can go do these things by myself all the time. And it's great, right? For example, eating alone. I, for whatever reason, have a very, very hard time with this. I will find myself, and this is when I had the epiphany, because I was walking around Mexico City for what felt like an hour. I was starving. I hadn't eaten all day, and this was like almost dinner time. And there's plenty of places I can walk into, like, but you get in your head about it. So I won't go into too much detail on like my thought process of that, but eating alone, finding a place to eat alone for me is something that really pushes me out of my comfort zone. It's not exactly the fact that I'm eating alone. Like, it's not like being judged. There's a lot more to it, but I've successfully done it. I've successfully done this many times now, but then I still find myself doing it. And then every time I'm like, goddamn, Caitlin, why are you still struggling with this? You've done it so many times. You travel by yourself. You've got this. But yeah, for whatever reason, it just doesn't get easier fast enough. So, traveling in and of itself, for me, I have realized is really dysregulating, and it can be really unsettling, even if it's really enjoyable. Like, it can still be like unsettling to your nervous system and all of that. And I can only handle so much newness at once. So stacking too many of those new things up at once can it's like Jenga, right? It like just causes the whole thing. Like, too many stacked too high and it just falls over, and I'm in the fetal position, not wanting to do anything. And then I'm, losing my self-confidence and everything. Right. So for example, like with the stacking, it's like you're landing in a new place, right? And learning a new language versus, maybe it wouldn't be as stressful if it's somewhere that you've maybe been already, or somewhere that you kind of know the language, or it is like your home language. Then you're figuring out where everything is. You're figuring out all the things that you want to do. Then you're figuring out the transportation systems. How do those work? And how do I do it without getting scammed by the driver who's trying to charge me an astronomical amount? And then you're navigating social interactions and figuring out if you want to go to events and meeting new nomads or interacting with the locals. And, everyone has their things that are a challenge for them when they are traveling, or things that give them an opportunity to kind of like grow. So yeah, challenging yourself to a couple of these things at a time is great. Amazing. But when you do way too many at once, it's kind of taking you out of like your window of tolerance, essentially. And then I wind up sitting in my room in Mexico City, ordering pizza that I can't even eat because I'm not supposed to have gluten or dairy, but I'm so overwhelmed, and I can get that really easily on the DD delivery app. So now I'm just going to sit there and eat that because I'm just like overwhelmed, and now I'm not actually enjoying my time in the city. So I think sometimes it is okay to be comfortable, and sometimes you can wind up enjoying, you don't have to be solo traveling to feel like you're accomplishing this big thing. You can grow whether you're traveling with the group, whether you're staying at a co-living, traveling with your friend, your mom, whoever. You can still have these same experiences, but maybe more at a rate that is like more comfortable for you, and you can kind of select a little bit easier, like kind of how much you want to push yourself that day, or just having someone next to you. Maybe you're still doing a million things that take you outside of your comfort zone, but just having someone next to you when you're doing it, or knowing that you're going to get dinner with someone else later. It just allows you to, I think, feel a little more settled. That is my rant. Like I said, some people might love solo traveling and like pushing their comfort zone. I love that. Some people, yeah, that's just my rant. That is all I have to say. But actually, no, that isn't all that I have to say, Janessa, because here we go. But then again, like, what is our definition of solo travel actually? Like, I'm saying that I hate solo travel, but to an extent, and probably to other people who looking at me, like, they consider me a solo traveler. Like, what is solo travel really? And like, I would love to get some of your thoughts on that.
Oof, yes, that was all so honest. And I think a lot of people can relate. I also have been wondering, like, yeah, what is a solo traveler? Because for such a long time, that was like a big part of my identity. And I think in my early 20s, I would go on these backpacking trips solo, and I thrived on that. I loved showing up in a place where I knew no one, being pushed out of my comfort zone. I remember like loving the feeling of showing up somewhere and being a bit uncomfortable. But when it's your life, when it's every single month or a couple months in a new place, I don't think you have to do that all the time either. So
it is draining.
It's very draining. And someone recently asked me this of like, well, you're a solo traveler. Are you lonely? And I was like, well, no, because I'm never actually alone. And then I thought about it, and it's been probably well over a year since I've shown up in a destination and not had friends there, because I'm very fortunate. I do have community all over the world. So yes, I'm arriving solo, booking my own accommodation often, but am I really solo anymore? If I have all these people to lean on, maybe I haven't been traveling solo in a while. So I'm also kind of combating that newness fatigue by staying at co-livings. But for example, in Mexico, I stayed at a co-living and I had 4 friends there. I didn't book it because of any of them. And yet there we all were. They didn't all know each other, but we just run into the same people.
That is wild.
You guys, this global community can be so small sometimes. It's insane. And I also just return to a lot of places. So here in Cape Town, I have a massive social circle. I have that in a lot of different countries in the world. And so when this person asked me if I'm lonely, I was like, what do you mean? But then maybe that means I'm not traveling solo anymore, even though I'm choosing on my own to go somewhere rather than going with a group, for example. So I love how honest and real you are about that, because it's definitely different, I think, for long-term travel versus going on a vacation solo or going on a backpacking trip. And now I really do prioritize going where my friends are and staying with community. And fun fact, I'm actually about to go on my first real solo trip in who knows how long now. And I'm going to Egypt. I'm meeting up with people later, but my first couple weeks, I'm completely alone. I don't know anyone. I'm going to Cairo. And so I'm a little bit curious how this is going to feel, of like finally being solo again and in a place that is kind of known for being a little bit overwhelming for solo female travelers. So I'm going to be pushing myself out of that comfort zone for once, and I will let you guys know how it goes.
I love that. Yeah, let us know how it goes. Keep me updated in real time, Janessa. I'm super curious. But yeah, there's a lot of travel influencers and things, and it's, solo female travel or whatever. But yeah, I don't really think it's necessarily, I don't know. We need to come up with a word that kind of combines like solo with like not being solo, like we book this trip, and maybe we're not booking it because we know that people are there, but you're booking the trip, you're going to the airport, you're flying, you're getting to your Airbnb all by yourself, but yeah, then you're tapping into a community and you have friends there, or you're making new friends. So at some point you're no longer solo anymore. So I would love to think of like a new term for this like new era of travel. But I'll end this rant here because there is one more super important thing that I want to talk with everyone about, Janessa. And that is the one mistake that I keep repeating. So What is the one mistake that you keep repeating, listeners? Is it not budgeting realistically? Is it forgetting to figure out transportation before you land? Knowing what kind of visa you should have and just winging it when you land and hope that you did it right? Maybe it's not giving yourself enough time to settle and rest before you hit the ground running, and you try to start doing all the things only to realize you burn out real fast, but yet you keep doing it. For me, it is all those things. It is definitely all of those things. But today, I specifically want to talk with everyone about my mistakes with packing, because I never, ever do it right. So, never. I absolutely never do it right. So I'm going to call this segment The Ridiculous Things That I Packed in the Last 2 years. So, in 2024, which is when I kind of like started my Nomad journey, I traveled with my 40-liter carry-on Osprey backpack. And then I also had like a carry-on size suitcase that I checked in, but it was, carry-on size, because I accepted the fact that I was just not a one-bag traveler. And from that moment on, I just felt like I didn't pack right. In this case, I felt that I underpacked a little bit in general. So for 2025, I actually decided to get a bigger suitcase, like your regular checked in size, like not the super huge one, but like your standard one. So I had that and then my 40-liter bag again. And I thought I had the perfect strategy. I really did. I thought, because traveling can be really overwhelming and stuff, like, I had the strategy or this goal of just wanting to make sure that I have all the stuff that I need. But now that I have a little bit more room, like I want to just have stuff with me that makes me feel a little bit more at home, or a little bit more like normal, I guess, while I was traveling. I wanted to bring things that like made me feel more grounded, more comfortable, like not that I was, packing up and leaving every week or month or however long I want to, staying. And how did that work out? Well, obviously not that great, judging by the name of this segment. So I'm going to share with you the ridiculous things that I packed that I will never pack again. So the first thing, this was so dumb. I didn't have a Kindle. I wanted a Kindle, didn't have one. So what did I do instead? I shoved 5 big books into my suitcase. Five like books. Like I could hit someone with them. Like not even tiny books, like thick, good sized books. One of them was Lord of the Rings. I did wind up dropping that. We all know how big a Lord of the Rings like book is. I did wind up dropping that. Cause I had this goal that I was going to read this year. One book a quarter. I was going to read a book, not listen to an audiobook, cause you have to rewind those a million times. I was going to read 5 books. Did that happen? Absolutely not. That did not happen. So that was a waste of space. Waste of space. The next thing that I brought was like multiple different notebooks, because it's like I kind of like to use one notebook for one thing. One's like a work notebook. I had this big idea that I was going to make this like kind of like keepsake notebook where I kind of scrapbooked and saved all of my like, receipts and silly things, like the artsy things that people like to do on TikTok. I was like, I'm going to be that person. I didn't need multiple notebooks. I brought markers for that because you can't buy markers in any other country if you really need them. I brought a hat, which, is normal to everyone. It's not normal to me because I have never worn a hat in my life. Every time I put one on, I feel like I look like my brother and I hate it. So, but for whatever reason, I thought I was going to be a hat girl this year. Do you see a pattern here, everyone? The pattern is that I think I'm going to change my life when I travel. So don't pack for the person that you think you're going to be when you travel. Pack for the person that you currently are, and like you can adjust along the way. I really thought that I was going to do all these things, because travel can be so romanticized, and this is when I'm going to change my life. And then, I brought a lot of like full-size products, which some, can't necessarily get, some makeup things, whatever, but giant lotions and things that I can get anywhere else. I just thought I might as well just get it in the States because it might be cheaper. It's not cheaper in the States to get these things. I don't know what I was thinking. So that's my list of ridiculous things that I will never bring again. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that before I continue, because I can continue.
When you mentioned that you wanted to name some ridiculous things you packed, I, to be honest, was struggling with this category a little bit. Again, type A traveler over here.
We are not the same.
I do not bring books. I do not bring markers. I am also not a hat person. I have very curly hair. It doesn't work for me. I do have one hat with me for, I don't know, in case I need it, but I probably should wear it more often than I do. But okay, I'm more curious to hear what you packed that is ridiculous that you will continue to pack.
Okay, so the couple things that I will bring with me again that were like still a little ridiculous. There was one book that I will, I'm glad that I travel with. It was a book that you read like one little passage daily. So that was really nice. I loved having it. That book meant a lot to me. Cool. A power strip, like a thing with like multiple outlets on it. I wound up not really using it. It had like a surge protector. No, I did use it a couple times. So it is good to have in case you don't have multiple outlets. But when you get one with the surge protector, like, sometimes like if you plug your laptop in, it might like short out or whatever. So that kind of helps, I guess. That's what my friend told me. That's why I bought one. I was told I needed to have it. Another ridiculous thing that I will continue to travel with is my Palo Santo, and kind of like my little keepsakes that I like to have. It's like kind of just like a little, I guess like a little altar kind of thing, just like things that are important to me, things that remind me of people who love me. I like to keep that with me. I had it all just kind of wrapped in random things in my bag because I thought I was going to find a nice box while I traveled to keep it in. So that didn't happen. So maybe I'll just keep all that in a little box this time. Small contained box that doesn't ever get any bigger than the original one that I bought. Like keep it small, like the size of my hand. I also, for whatever reason, I kind of have like this bag that I consider my junk drawer of my suitcase. So I have like a little knee wrap in there in case, my knee gives out because sometimes when I hike, my knee gives out. I have a little like emergency blanket, it's a little emergency blanket. They're super cheap. They look like tinfoil essentially, but they're good actually to keep like in your car. Let's say you get in a car accident and you're stranded somewhere. You can pull that out, it's just a little emergency.
But does it stay in your junk drawer suitcase, or do you bring it in car rides and hikes and where you need it?
Yeah, that's the problem. It kind of stays in my suitcase.
I'm calling you out
it kind
here.
of stays in my suitcase. So, in theory, it helps. It makes me feel better having it. Yeah, I have like a little mini notebook in there, another notebook. I should probably just keep the mini one. I had these little rave glasses that I traveled with because Bansko Nomad Fest always has this like glow party during it. And I was like, I'm going to dress up this year.
True.
So you know what? I did I use them? No, because I forgot to wear them that night. So maybe I would get rid of that. I would still get rid of those. But yeah, so random cords. So I think I will keep the junk drawer. We all know that we have junk drawers in our houses, and for whatever reason, we can't get rid of the items in there. Like we just have to keep them just in case. So this is my equivalent of that. I'll maybe get rid of some things, but I think in general, I'll keep my junk drawer. And then the last thing that I travel with, which is like super random, but it's great for me to have. This is for the ladies. Typically, I have I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok. It's this like laser hair removal device.
No, I haven't seen this. My algorithm hasn't targeted me for that
well,
yet.
Maybe now it will. Now that we're recording it, here's me saying it. But that has been great. It's not too big, but yeah, I travel with that. That's probably like the most random thing I have in there. And I will continue to travel with that. And that's my list as of this moment, at least.
Okay. So some things that it's probably time
not too bad.
to clear out, but some things that make sense. Like you do need some comfort items, some just in case items. I get it. I don't pack too many ridiculous things. Depends what your definition of that is. I do travel with a coffee maker. I bring an AeroPress everywhere with me, but I use it. Yes, but I use it every single day. I love my AeroPress. I travel with a silk pillowcase. It's very, very small. It rolls up tiny. It makes every bed feel a little bit more like home. I do travel with a travel size yoga mat.
Ooh, I have one of those too. Yeah, but I didn't consider that ridiculous.
I go through seasons of using it, and I go through seasons of hauling it to multiple countries and never unrolling it. So I think overall net positive, but there are some times where it starts to feel ridiculous of like if I'm just going to a gym instead, or I don't have the space to roll it out wherever I'm living. So that one kind of, my use of it is intermittent, but I'll keep traveling with it. At the moment, so I just had to move apartments yesterday. So within Cape Town, I just took an Uber. I had so much stuff. I don't even know how, but I had all this like kitchen stuff. So I had a giant tub of protein powder. I had my like laundry pods. I had other food items, but that's within the same city. Those would not come to another country with me. They would never come on a plane with me. But there I am struggling to get in and out of my Uber with just my like grocery bags on grocery bags of stuff. But I had been living in the same place for almost 2 months. So you do accumulate a lot of stuff. At the moment, I'm also like carrying around clothing for a climate that I am not in. Because every time I leave home, I don't know if it's going to be for 6 months or 8 months or 12 months. Sometimes I do go 12 months at a time. And so I need stuff for every climate. I have done Mexican beaches and European Christmas markets in the same backpack. So I'm carrying around my Blundstone boots. I've got a pair of jeans. I've got this like oversized denim jacket that I have to wear / carry on every airplane day because it's so large, but I just love it so much. I got it from a flea market years ago as my favorite clothing item, but for months at a time, I don't need it. It feels unnecessary. But then as soon as I do get back to a climate where I need it, then I'm grateful that I have it. So
glad that you have it.
Yeah, exactly. I think my guilty trait is that every time I go back to my mom's house, I unpack into this drawer. It's my travel drawer. And then I repack. And a lot of the stuff from that drawer never leaves the drawer. So then it doesn't get repacked. Little bits of like toiletries left over where it's like, oh, it's a half-used mini shampoo or whatever. And so it just stays in the drawer and then I never repack it. Or I probably have like 8 European plug adapters in there and I only bring 2 with me. I don't know why I have so many, but thanks, Mom, for letting me continue to have my junk drawer in your house so that it doesn't have to be in my suitcase. So I guess that's how I avoid this problem in some ways.
Well, you know what? I have a little bit of a box as well that I unload into when I get here, but then I wind up repacking some of it. But actually, that is kind of a good strategy. It kind of shows you the things that you use and don't use, and then you know not to bring it for next time. So it does kind of help you kind of evaluate what you're actually using and what you're not using. Yeah, but I guess to end this segment, I do have a little bit of a challenge for you listeners if you are in the process of packing. First, for everyone, I want to know what ridiculous things that you're traveling with so that I can feel better about myself, or maybe we could bond over it. I don't know. But anyway, if you're packing for a trip or, you're getting ready to head to your next location, I would love to challenge you to just pick, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 things. Doesn't matter how big or how small, but just pick 2 or 3 things that you're traveling with that you can maybe get rid of. And then maybe you'll have some more room to, buy some new things when you're traveling. Because that's also a big struggle that I have. No room in my bag to buy the things that I want to buy when I'm traveling. So what 2 or 3 things can you kind of unload and try traveling without for a little while and see how it goes. So that is my challenge to you.
I love that. Yeah, definitely let us know. All right. So as we wrap up, we are each going to share our number 1 biggest takeaway from today's conversation in just a moment. First, one last reminder to sign up for our free newsletter where you'll get more helpful resources like you heard today over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, let us know your thoughts about this episode or any other ideas that you'd like us to talk about. Please send us an email. at Caitlin@zerototravel.com or send a message on Instagram @zerototravel. So I can go first on this one. My biggest takeaway is that there's no real way to do travel right. We've talked about whether it's with the budgeting or the packing or the solo travel, like you just need to get out there and try and experiment and see what works for you and what maybe works for someone else online, whether it's a packing video or a budgeting video or something. Maybe that doesn't work for you. And also, if you hate solo travel, you don't have to solo travel. There are no rules that you have to do what other people do. So hopefully this episode has given you a mix of things to ponder and some practical advice of things to try that you can take into your own travel lifestyle or your next trip, and just figure out really what works for you, not for Caitlin or I, but for your own trips.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say that I kind of agree with everything that you just said. I think my biggest takeaway is mostly the same thing. So just to add to that too, like, yeah, all of this is a big experiment. You don't know until you do it. And, when it comes to things like solo travel or the type of traveler that you consider yourself to be, like, we don't need to put these labels on ourselves or try to fit into these stereotypes or definitions or expectations and ideas that we have about what travel looks like, about how other people, think a solo traveler should be. So yeah, screw the labels, do your own thing and see how it goes. And you just kind of ebb and flow and you figure it out along the way.
Great. All right. So we have left you with a challenge of figuring out what works for you and maybe taking something out of your bag that you don't need to travel with.
2 to 3 things.
2 to 3 things. And let us know what those things are. And especially if they're ridiculous. I want to hear the ridiculous ones.
I need to know.
Exactly. We love to hear from you guys. So just as we wrap up here, of course, as always, a quote before you go. So this is from one of my favorite personal finance experts. Spend extravagantly on the things you love and cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. And that is Ramit Sethi. And with that, we will wrap up this episode. Thank you for listening.
All right. See you guys next time.
Bye.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.